Our topic for today is about feelings and emotions and the role that feelings and emotions play in the religious life of a person. At the beginning of our vignettes, we mentioned the fact that feelings and emotions are disastrous to one's religious life. Today, we shall show you the harm that feelings and emotions do when one is trying to be religious. Let us divide the faculties of man in a simple way, just to emphasize what we are trying to say. We can say that man is made up of a mind and a heart, or a rational mind that thinks and a heart that feels, a heart that has emotions. And both those things are good, they are not evil whatsoever. It is part and parcel of the human nature of man. But if you will recall the incident in paradise, we have Adam and Eve in particular, wherein she was being tempted by the evil one. And you can see immediately how the two faculties in Eve was working. In the first place, the devil tempted Eve. The temptation was to disobey God by showing her something that was nice. Now, Eve at the beginning was using her head or her mind. And when she was being tempted, she kept on repeating, "But we have a command from God not to eat of this fruit." She knew very well there was a command of God, and it was her mind that was reminding her of this. But then the evil one kept on saying, "But look, Eve, look at the fruit. It is nice to eat." Now, that was an appeal to the emotions, an appeal to one's feeling. When people decide on matters and their decision is based on the fact that it is nice and it is not nice, we say that they are deciding based on feeling and emotions. Why do you like this? Because it is nice. Why don't you like this? Because it is not nice. Now, obviously, that is not very rational. It is merely deciding by means of feelings. And so, as we have seen in the first vignettes, this feeling, okay, it's natural. It is present in all human beings, and you cannot remove it. It is there every day, sometimes every moment of our lives, it is there. But it must have nothing to do with religion. During our first vignettes, we gave a general observation or a general analysis of the Christian sect, all our separated brothers on one hand, and the Catholic Church on the other hand. And we mentioned the fact that almost all our Christian brothers, separated Christian brothers, are ruled by feelings and emotions, while the true Catholic Church is ruled more by the mind and the intellect. Of course, today we cannot say that anymore because we Catholics too are getting too emotional and are ruled by our feelings. Our separated brothers, the Christian sect, can be divided into two. The first ones are those that came from the Catholic Church, from within the Catholic Church, and the other group are those that simply sprouted from nowhere. I mean, they have no connection whatsoever with the Catholic Church. They never came from the Catholic Church. They just sort of appeared from nowhere. Now, this second does not interest us very much, though they too are governed more by feelings and emotions. The ones that interest us are the first ones, those that came within the Catholic Church. A very good example of this, for instance, is Martin Luther. You must keep in mind that Martin Luther saw the state of the Catholic Church, and he saw that it was in a very poor, miserable state. And being an Augustinian monk, he wanted to reform the Catholic Church. See, it's a very good intention. Very few priests or bishops during those times would have wanted to reform the Catholic Church, because at that time the Catholic Church was so rich and everyone simply wanted to cling to the worldliness and riches of the church. And so here you see a monk, Martin Luther, who was within the Catholic Church. Now notice that first he knew the state of the Catholic Church because he was within the Catholic Church. And he knew how the church should look like. And therefore he wanted to return to that old church. But his defect was he was too emotional, shown by his ups and downs in his emotions. Sometimes he was very scrupulous, sometimes he was in despair, and sometimes he was emotionally up. That was his downfall. He was emotional and he was guided by feelings. So his conflict with the Catholic Church became, instead of doctrinal, it became emotional. And this is what made him leave the church. And so from the beginning, from Montanus and so on, it is the same problem that these people were, the words used by St. Paul, they were enthusiastic. So you see, enthusiasm is a matter of feeling and emotion. They were always emotionally high. And it was this enthusiasm that destroyed them, that made them leave the church. And St. Paul described this as enthusiasm that was not enlightened by the mind. And so this is what we are trying to avoid in this vignette, that we must make sure that religion is occupied by our minds. Our minds are the ones used for religion, and while occasionally we become emotional and filled with feelings, this must not approach the realm of religion. In scriptures, there are three examples that we can imitate. First, the example of Christ, who practically showed no tumultuous emotion, no agitation, no high and low emotions. On the other hand, we have Peter, who was always vehement in his emotions. And of course, the Jewish people who were emotionally high during the entry of Jesus Christ into Jerusalem. And so in the first part, we have Peter, who kept on vowing to die for Christ and with Christ, and promised he would never leave Christ even if he had to die. Vehemence. He was emotional. Well, he was still beginning in the spiritual life, so it was understandable that he was emotional. Beginners in the spiritual life are usually emotional. And yet, when Christ was arrested, Peter abandoned Christ. See what happens when you put emotions and feelings into your religious belief? You can end up denying Christ, no matter how strong your emotions are. And then let us look at the Jewish people. You know, they have just heard that Christ have raised Lazarus from the dead at Bethany. And so when Christ went to Jerusalem, they were emotionally high. And so when they saw Christ approaching, there were a jubilant shouting emotions of hosannas, welcoming Christ as King and Lord. And a few days later on, they would shout, "Crucify him, crucify him." See again what emotions will do to you if you mix religion with feelings and emotions. And there was, of course, the example of Mary Magdalene, who fell at the foot of Christ, crying and washing his feet. That was emotional. It was not pure mind. It was feeling and emotional. But then Mary Magdalene was just beginning her repentance, and that was understandable. If Mary Magdalene simply stayed in that level, she would not have become a saint. And as we can see, as Mary Magdalene progressed in the spiritual life, she lost her sentimentality. If we look therefore at Jesus Christ, he never showed a great difference in his emotions. Not too high, not too low. In fact, he hardly moved. He was always serene, and he was always calm. He never showed any outbursts of emotions. That's the reason why practically all the films, all the movies and shows on television about Jesus Christ are wrong. It is not the Catholic Christ that is there. What they are portraying is an emotional Christ, which Christ was never one. And so, therefore, we must be very careful in living our religion. Our example must be Christ, who had no swings of emotion, always calm and serene. God bless you.